Sometimes you just don't know where to start with these things. I wanted to make this video yesterday, but the issues were so complicated. I reckon to do it justice, I just had to sleep on it. And so that's what I did. And even now, if my video seems to be a bit disconnected, it's because it's all over the place. I'm going to be playing you a video made in Wales, featuring, as it says here, some Welsh scenery, which, quite frankly, looks just like any other scenery anywhere else in suburban England or Scotland or Northern Ireland, I think. So that's hardly some Welsh scenery. But the thing about this video is that it features schoolgirls. Yeah, schoolgirls welcoming immigrants. The whole thing was so outrageous that my first thought when I saw it was that it had been cooked up by some sort of ultra-nationalist group in order to anger Welsh people into revolting, into rebelling against what the Welsh government is doing to them. So I actually ran a few checks to make sure it was genuine, and I'm going to play it to you. However, you may notice that there's going to be a slight difference between my version and the version online. If I remember, I'll leave the link. Elon Musk put it out on his timeline. Not only is there a slight difference between my version and the one you'll find online, you will also see a difference between what the girls are actually saying and what actually happens in Wales. But first, I'm going to tell you that I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Right, let's get on with it.
Today we're here to tell you the opportunities in Wales for refugees.
We have lovely nature and surroundings.
We have a Welsh celebration every year called our Eisteddfod.
The Welsh Refugee Council helps refugees with getting a bank account, universal credit, child benefits, pension credit, employment and education advice.
They also help with housing, registering to schools, residential permits and accommodation.
They also help with the hardest part, learning English. They have small classes with different students from all across the world learning English.
We also have a great economy.
We have free healthcare, freedom of speech, political stability, and the right to be who we are. We hope you love Wales.
Hwyl.
All right. So let's have a look at this. There are a couple of ironies in there, as I said. The first is that I've had to blur out the girls because YouTube restricts videos featuring children. However, the video was made by a Welsh school and put in the public domain. Yeah, go figure. I assume that the parents were asked for their permission, but I'm not sure the parents knew exactly what they were giving permission for. Irony the second. Let's see, am I still recording? Yes. Irony the second. All right, let's have a look at this. Yeah, here we have a list of how this news hit the internet. Obviously, it caused quite a bit of a kerfuffle there, which prompted a response from the Welsh Refugee Council as follows. Spread of online misinformation, January 2025. So let's have a look at what they say. We are concerned by the circulation of misinformation by individuals in positions of influence. They're referring on the sly to Elon Musk, of course. Now, I just, the whole tone of this article is actually a characteristic of Wales, not among every Welsh person, obviously, but it's a characteristic that Dylan Thomas flagged up in some of his, I'm not saying this never happens to other people, by the way, a sort of small-minded censoriousness and sly way of of getting at people without actually getting at people. I mean, without actually naming them. Dylan Thomas, I don't know, who was it? There was Mr. Pugh, and there was Mrs. Pritchard. Oh, that's interesting. I'm just remembering the one whose names begin with P. But there were others as well. Anyway, and here we have that sort of attitude. We're concerned by the circulation of misinformation by individuals in positions of influence. We urge everyone to seek the facts before sharing or endorsing inaccurate content, including fake images, doctored videos and misleading claims. Well, look, these aren't fake images. I mean, what I showed you wasn't fake. It was absolutely the right thing. That's what happened. And as a matter of fact, that was the second. There were two videos which apparently this is just Schoolgirls. The first one featured boys. How very inclusive. But we can assume, I suppose, that if they're talking about migrants who don't speak English and you can get English lessons, and that's the hardest part, according to one of those girls, then migrants who don't speak English won't be accessing this. And nor will school children. Actually, it's not school children who decide where they're going to fetch up once they've washed ashore in Britain. And so anyone who watches this, it would be the parents who would be expected to watch. Since the parents are obviously not English speakers, then that rules them out. So I'm quite sure that the reason for this video was that it was to be shown to Welsh school children to convince them that any disquiet they have it isn't being shared by the majority. This is so keep your bigoted thoughts to yourself. And that's what really disturbs me about this. Let's have a look at what else they say here. Well, actually, no. Before I do that, one of the girls mentions freedom of speech. Let's have a look at this. I told you there's so much to think of in this. Let's just have a look at this while we're talking about freedom of speech. This is Free Speech Wales. The Free Speech Wales is to hold a meeting on Thursday evening in central Cardiff on the 14th of November. Topics to include the secrecy surrounding the family courts in Wales and an update on our campaign to support Ben Dibowski, the teacher dismissed from a church school after talking about Christian beliefs in a staff training session. So he was talking about his Christian beliefs in a training session, not to his pupils, but to other staff, and he was dismissed from a church school. Right? So that freedom of speech, well. And then there's this. GB News and freedom of expression in Wales, it says here. This article looks at Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which is about freedom of expression. And I just want to point out that this is a Welsh publication, the Welsh Agenda, and its application to Welsh public life, touching 2 case studies. The first relates to Professor Nigel Hunt, the Wrexham University academic, who lost his position because of his comments about the Welsh language and bilingual road signs. So obviously, Professor Hunt thought that the Welsh language was secondary in some way. I can imagine him saying that bilingual road signs mean that people who speak only English are going to have more trouble seeing road signs. I am not sure, I'm just guessing. Although he might just as well have been talking about the constant mistranslations you find. For instance, this here, no entry for heavy goods vehicles, residential site only, has this Welsh translation, which turns out to be, I am not in the office at the moment. Send any work to be translated. And maybe he was making fun of that. There's another one, which is the name of Monmouth. Monmouth in Welsh translates to Trefynwy, meaning town on the Monnow. However, on the A449 interchange at Usk, the town spelling instead has an extra W here. There's a W here as well as here, and they shouldn't be, making it Trefynwy. I probably haven't got the pronunciation of that correctly. I'm sure that somebody is going to correct me on that. Anyway, which actually translates to egg gas town. Yeah, not that pleasant. Anyway, so he may have been just talking about this sort of thing, that obviously people who are running this sort of thing don't speak their own language that well either, and he may have just been making a comment about that. However, back to the serious stuff. The second relates to the Senedd Commission's decision to remove GB News from the Senedd internal television system. So this is freedom of speech in Wales. That girl was saying, we have freedom of speech here. Well, a religious teacher in a church school who had Christian beliefs was sacked, and Professor Hunt lost his job because of comments about the Welsh language. So we're going to get one of those, on the one hand, but, and then on the other hand type of arguments. Everyone has the right to freedom of expression, it says here. And the exercise of those freedoms may be subject to such formalities, conditions, restrictions or penalties as are prescribed by law. So they say, you can have freedom of speech, but, there are limits. The standard one is, you can't just shout fire in a crowded theatre. But this isn't shouting fire. This is a man who had certain opinions and it didn't harm anyone. Those were his opinions. In the first case study, Professor Hunt raised freedom of expression to justify his comments. By implication, he also challenged the decision that he and Wrexham University should part company. However, his comments show a misunderstanding about the right. No, I don't think they do, but obviously they do here. As happened here, it's common response by A when challenged about a statement made by A that A has the right to make the statement because of the right to freedom of expression. There are two implicit premises: that it is an absolute right. The right covers the ability for A to say anything, no matter how objectionable. And here you have it, objectionable. You have the right to say objectionable things. What you don't have the right to do is incite other people to do nasty things because of your opinions. And that A should be protected in the exercise of that right. So you see, already There's no freedom of expression in Wales, as indeed I'm not saying that in this respect Wales is any worse than England, by the way. But the only reason I'm bringing it up is because that girl said we have freedom of expression here, freedom of speech. And then they say again, it's not an absolute right. So we believe in the EHCR or ECHR or whatever. It's the ECHR. We believe in that, but it's not an absolute right. Professor Hunt didn't say anything unlawful. They say that, which takes us to the second implied premise, that A should not suffer adverse consequences. Professor Hunt's comments displayed an apparent insensitivity and or ignorance of Wales and the Welsh language. Maybe he did, but that's no reason for him to lose his job. And insensitivity is everyone's right. He has a right to choose to those views and to express them, but not to the extent of restricting others' rights to respond lawfully. Yeah, so anyone could say, you're wrong, Professor Hunt. Losing his job is not saying you're wrong. It's saying, I don't wish to discuss this, shut up, and I'm going to shut you up. Professor Hunt exercised his rights to free speech and he was legally protected. Yet he wasn't. This is real doublethink here. Real doublethink. His employer had the ability to impose adverse consequence. No, his employer had the ability to say, we disagree. They should not have had the ability to sack him. It considered that his views were inconsistent with its publicly stated position concerning the Welsh language. Well, they may be inconsistent. That doesn't mean to say he can't teach at the university. Now, and this is where I was talking about this sort of sly censoriousness, which, as I said, Dylan Thomas noticed, and a lot of people noticed. On the face, it was legally entitled to use this as a reason to terminate his contract. The former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has acquired the title former in comparable circumstances. That's a nasty dig, and totally, not only unwarranted, but completely wrong. Suella Braverman lost her job because the government wouldn't take any notice of what she said, not because of what she'd said. She was voted out of office along with the rest of many of her colleagues in the Conservative Party because she said something that they didn't like, but not because she was wrong and not because she didn't have the right to say it. And the Conservative Party has suffered because of their unwillingness to listen to her. And it looks to me very much like Wales is stuffed because of this tendency here not to listen to people who are saying things that you don't like. And to go back to those schoolgirls, this is another example of an internal propaganda exercise by whatever Welsh authority, in this case the Welsh government by the looks of things, not to entice immigrants to come to Wales, although it might in some cases, but to crush any discussion of the subject among Welsh children. Because, as we know, children are easily led and tend to go with the crowd. And as long as they see the crowd doing A, then they'll tend to suppress their own feelings and go with A. The video in question was produced by a group of young children. No, it wasn't. It was produced by the school. Let's say the photography and all of this was not a group of young children. They had teachers, maybe pushing them, maybe scripting them, maybe directing them. Certainly the kids participated. But it didn't just pop up out of the Welsh school children without the teachers' gentle pushing, for sure. The video was withdrawn in 2023 following extensive online abuse received by the school. And although I'm quite sure it will still be played in the schools because it serves a purpose. OK, well, that's my video about the Welsh schoolgirls. Honestly, I am starting to despair. Till next time, you can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.